Welcome to Rocky Mountain Gun Owners Legal Update. I'm Dudley Brown. This is Taylor Rhodes. And we're going to give you an update on what's going on with our count them, 5 lawsuits in the state of Colorado using the Bruen decision. But before we do that, you have a question, Taylor.
I've got a question. Are you tired of winning yet?
I'm so tired of it, yes. This is really tiring. I'm not having any fun. Actually, this is one of the most fun times to be alive and to be a, quotes, gun lobbyist and gun activist, because the Supreme Court decision by Justice Clarence Thomas is we're putting it into traction mode and making a lot of advancements. And so we want to tell you all about that, as well as a federal judge that granted our temporary restraining order against the county of Boulder and their gun controls. So let's talk about this and go into the details, Taylor.
So just yesterday, we were given a TRO, and on top of that, we had consolidation. But the most important part of this is now the second time that a progressive judge, a Democrat-appointed judge, has filed in our favor. So not only has a Obama-appointed judge ruled in our favor, now a Biden-appointed judge has ruled in our favor.
But let's back up. That's what we're going to talk about, and let's try and keep this less confusing, untangle the mess. So after the Bruen decision by Judge Clarence Thomas, we filed a lawsuit against the town of Superior with our plaintiff, Brad Walker. And Brad lives in Superior, and he did not want to follow and said he couldn't really follow the dictates of the city ordinance. Now, this city ordinance was largely created by Moms Demand Action and Bloomberg's crowd, and had created this recipe. And so we filed suit saying that the Bruen decision says we don't have to follow those rules anymore, and especially when it comes to assault weapons, so-called assault weapons, and magazine restrictions. Now, so after we got that filed, we got a restraining order that was temporary and agreed to by the judge, who was a Obama-appointed judge, Judge Moore. Now, in that ruling, he said, yes, we do need, because we think the plaintiffs are going to win, and I believe the plaintiffs are going to win, I'm paraphrasing him here, I have to rule in favor of the temporary restraining order. Now, that case started progressing, and we immediately said, okay,
we're going to win.
We're going to win this. We know we got the tiger by the tail. Let's go out and file against these other cities who are passing ordinances.
And I think it's important to note, temporary restraining orders is something you put on a rapist. It's something that you put someone that you want to keep away. The town of Superior, the town of Boulder, the county of Boulder, the town of Louisville, I mean, they have, for lack of better words, raped our rights.
They're raping our rights, so we have to get a restraining order on them. So, okay, so we filed that against Superior. And we filed it with Barry Arrington, who's a former Colorado state legislator and real solid attorney and has worked with us before. But then we went to file him against Louisville.
Sure.
And we filed against the city of Boulder and then the county of Boulder, because they all have similar, very close to the same ordinances on magazine bans and assault weapons bans. And so those all kind of piled up with different plaintiffs and different restraining orders with different judges. But yesterday was when we got the news that a Biden appointee, who is quite far on the left, according to what we read, she agreed that we need a restraining order on the county of Boulder. And I'll read from her ruling. She wrote, in the substantial likelihood of prevailing on the merits, that the plaintiffs,
meaning we're going to win.
We meaning they're going to win. She really has no other options, and in fact, cites the Bruen decision, which is what we cite in our filing, and goes through the details of why she believes that of substantial likelihood of success on the merits. So, in other words, the judge is just admitting yeah, given the Bruen decision, I really don't have a choice.
Right. And one of the things that I found most interesting is when it's talking about the balance of harms in relation to public interest, she wrote, a constitutional right hangs in the balance, though even a temporary loss usually trumps any harm to the defendant.
So in other words, a constitutional right is really the paramount concern here. And if you're going to enforce it, and we believe it's a constitutional right, we have to stop you.
Right.
And that's what this judge did. Now, I don't want to go into too many details about the judges because, frankly, we have to be in front of these judges. Right. And we don't want to do too much of a dance because we've got some things to prove in court.
Sure.
And one of the things that Bruen set up was that you no longer have to have this balancing interest.
Right.
And now you can actually go out and prove with the text of the Second Amendment and the historical and traditional background behind those whether this was
without that cost-benefit analysis.
Without the cost-benefit analysis. Now, I frankly would be talking out of my keister, except that Rocky Mountain gun owners filed a lawsuit in 2013, right after the magazine ban went into effect, the 15-round, greater than 15-round magazine ban. And we filed a lawsuit, again, with the same attorney, Barry Arrington, and we slogged it out in court. This was really before Taylor came to work for RMGO. And it was a learning experience, but in the trial, we actually went through all the experts, but the judge kept giving these, well, this is the balancing act, and coming up with all kinds of weird, the police have an interest to keep the public safe, and we need to balance that against constitutional rights. And remember, that was in state court, not federal court. That was in Colorado State Court. It went all the way through the process, went up into the Colorado Supreme Court, and we lost there. However,
now thanks to Clarence Thomas, praise God for Clarence Thomas, we've got a whole different playing field that we're on now.
It's a total different playing field. We didn't do that. In fact, Clarence Thomas said, no, actually the Founding Fathers did the balancing act.
Right.
They tested it that way when they wrote the Second Amendment. They're the ones who already went through that test. You don't have to do that.
Right.
In fact, you're really not allowed to do that as a court. And that's when the Supreme Court remanded a lot of decisions right back to their courts, including California, and sent it back to them and said, a lot of your issues you're having with assault weapons and magazine bans, you have to rethink those. And you have to retest those. And that's a pretty good, that's a bright light saying, we got problems here and Bloomberg and company have to rethink their world. Now, we need to say Bloomberg is very deeply involved.
Right.
All of his organizations and those he funds.
And they have been for the last year and a half, 2 years.
Right. So they actually filed an intervention. They're basically intervening on the case and representing the city of Superior. Now, you might say, why did you pick on Superior? Well, one, because we had a plaintiff there originally.
And they're the tip of the spear.
They were the tip of the spear. They were the first city to really go fully woke on the Second Amendment. And we think, who better to use as an example than a 14,000 citizen town who far exceeded their ability to tell their residents what to do. Not just their residents, not just the people who live in the town, people who show up to the town, come into town to use their restaurant or buy gas there, or anything else.
And you have to do that if you're going to Boulder from Denver. I mean, it's smack in the middle, and there's a ton of gas stations, liquor stores. I'm sure this weekend when people go up for the CU game, they'll be stopping in Superior to
football.
Yeah.
So lame. I thought you liked contact sports. Yeah. So, says the hockey nut.
Yeah.
So I will say that we did pick on a small city, and we knew that we were going to end up probably fighting with a bunch of other cities.
Sure.
Now, the other news we got yesterday was that the other filings we did were all consolidated or going to be consolidated. In other words, the Superior case and Louisville and the city of Boulder and the county of Boulder will all become one case because they're relatively similar facts.
I mean, they were all written by the anti-gun lobby, right? It was a sheet that they gave all of these in a template that said, "Hey, go run this," and that's what they did.
And I know a lot of people say, "I don't live in any of those, so who cares?"
Right.
And I say, stand by, man. Unless these guys are stopped, they're trying to come to every town in America. Certainly in any cities like in Colorado or counties in which they believe they can pass this stuff. Right. They're going to go for all of it.
Right. I mean, if we're seeing now and we're hearing on the ground that even marginally left-leaning cities, municipalities are considering passing gun restrictions from, assault weapons bans to magazine capacity restrictions to even now waiting periods and open and concealed handgun restrictions of where you can and can't carry it. So right now we've heard of a couple of different ones, and Broomfield is coming up here shortly. Lyons, Colorado is coming up within the next week. There's been rumors of Fort Collins doing something of this nature, and then down further south, there's been a couple of wildfires that have popped up that our grassroots team is handling. And if you get any of those, email our email at activism@rmgohq.org, and someone from our team will be in contact with you to help you fight. And heck, we may even come down there and fight with you.
Yeah. We want to equip people. Okay, so let's kind of wrap this up. So we think we're going to have a consolidated case for all these Colorado cases. But one thing we really haven't talked about is our filing against the state. So we filed in federal court against the state magazine ban. We meaning actually the National Foundation for Gun Rights, and it's a little different than it was when RMGO filed it in 2013. And lost that state case because we're not arguing in state court on the state constitution. We're arguing in federal court on the U.S. Constitution and of course, using the Bruen case. And we're using much the same recipe that we're using with these cities. And it's not going to be any surprise to our opponents because they know it. And I'm not sure they can do much.
I don't think they can.
I don't think they can do much. But remember, Colorado's magazine ban is greater than 15 rounds, and we believe actually we have that on the ropes. We may be able to get rid of that in this case. So I'm going to tell you, if your friends who are activists are not involved in this,
or gun owners, just average gun owners,
if they're gun owners and they're not involved in this, you got to ask them, are you really an activist? Do you really care? Because frankly, if you're not, you don't care.
Right. I mean, I was at the range last night and just talking to a couple guys, and they're like, well, thanks so much for what you're doing. And I'm like, well, what have you done? and they're, kind of taken back a little bit. And I'm like, look, jump in this fight with us. I mean, even if it's donating $1 or $2, I mean, and
posting on social media and telling all your friends to go to your gun club. And if you're shooting matches, make sure you go to the matches and talk about it because there's hope. There is a range in western Colorado that is requiring people to sign an affidavit that says I won't use illegal magazines at this range. It shut down all the competitions there. Right. This is the kind of stuff that's coming to our state. You think California's bad. I actually think we could be worse because they've learned the lessons of what they can and cannot do in California.
Right.
Now they're going to do it, quotes, right here in Colorado.
Right. And one of the things that I've said to members of the press and even some of our allies at the state capitol is when preemption passed, we knew we were in for a fight. We didn't know how long it would take. I actually figured it would take them a little bit longer than it did, but it's proving to almost backfire on them because we're restoring a lot of the freedom, and we might actually be able to gain ground from these lawsuits if they play out in a way that could be advantageous for us.
Well, remember, we're talking about in a lot of these bans on magazines, we're talking about greater than 10 rounds.
Right.
That's every Glock.
Right.
Except your little single stacks. That's every Glock.
Right.
That's every. That's most of the striker fired pistols that people carry. on a regular basis, and
they're not just going for your AR. They're going for your everyday handgun.
They're not just going for these beautiful weapons.
Yeah, I know.
Not going for your fully automatic suppressed SCAR back here. But I do want to read just a few more bits and pieces off of this, because I think there's some great tidbits that that our staff Kevin worked up, and he's been driving all around the state trying to rouse up plaintiffs, and he's the one who found our Boulder County plaintiff. There's just a lot of fun things happening, and none of this happens without you. So if you're a member, if you're an activist, if you sign petitions, if you're involved in any manner with RMGO and NAGR, it's really happening because of you. And we couldn't do this stuff if we had to go and work.
Right.
I don't know what I'd do if I weren't doing this.
Right. So I think it's important to note, all of our plaintiffs are members. You know, one of the things that I heard from a member of the media last night is, well, this is just people from out of town doing this. There's nobody that actually lives there. That's BS.
You know, they actually have to live there.
They have to live there, and we have members in these areas that are being negatively affected and that are willing to fight back. So, you know, that's something to consider if this happens in your town. You know, I gave you the activism at rmgohq.org. Email us if you're interested in that, and Kevin checks that regularly.
Yeah, and if you go to a gun shop, don't assume they know what's going on.
Right.
80% or more of the gun shops in the state don't know. And so they have to be told. I know we all get lots of email. You get a lot of email with my name on it. I know that. And now with Taylor's name. But the fact is, this is a big one. This is the biggest one we've probably ever fought. And the only way it's going to continue to happen is we get more and more people involved. It is going to be expensive.
Right.
Bloomberg's going to try and basically run us dry. He can his people look at the numbers.
Oh, yeah,
they know
certainly.
how much we raise every year.
Right.
They know that we don't have deep pockets.
Right. And you know, projecting wise, if it goes the distance, I mean, what do you think? $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million?
Yeah. Certainly $1 million.
Yeah.
And who knows?
Right.
We're also looking for a number of people who just want to be run around as ambassadors to blow the horn and get people wound up on this.
Right.
So again, use that email address. We'll put it on the screen. So here's a great from Judge Sweeney in the Boulder County of Boulder case. She in the section entitled "Irreparable Harm" that the 10th Circuit. The federal 10th Circuit is what she's talking about, has noted that the infringement of a constitutional right is enough to satisfy this factor and requires no further showing of irreparable injury. In other words, if you're going to violate someone's constitutional right, they don't have to prove any other damages. And that's already been ruled by the 10th Circuit.
Right.
So, in other words, you better stop.
Right.
And we warned these guys that we would do this over and over and over again. Now we're just making good. Now I know there are going to be people who said, I heard this, I think you said it, somebody said, do you really need to file all these lawsuits?
So we were at a Republican women's group. I won't say which one, but we were at a group, and there's almost complaining.
You were there. I wouldn't go to those things anymore. Those things drive me crazy.
So they were literally complaining, and this is establishment Republican.
Where do they park their brooms?
The Republican Witches Club.
Yeah.
They'll never invite me back after watching this.
Yeah.
But, they were talking. They said, well, do you really have to file all these lawsuits? And these are the same people that complain that we don't do anything. And I'm like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. We either are doing something or we're not doing something. You complain when we do things against the people you like. We know you're complaining against the people that you say you don't like. I mean, which one is it?
Right. Right. Well, I mean, we have been using all your money to take private jets to Beverly Hills on shopping trips, right?
Yeah. NRA.
Yeah. So we thank you for your help, and we'll try and give you updates on a regular basis. We'll get better about it, but we wanted to untangle this mess and for you, and so you can kind of see it. Watch our website, watch our social media. We'll give you every update we can possibly. as soon as they happen.
And if you're not on our email address, our email list already, we'll link that in the comment section below, so you can join our email list. That's normally the best way to stay in the loop of what's going on in Colorado in regard to your Second Amendment freedoms.